You're about to make a decision that could change your life, a move, a trip, a meeting. And then, without warning, something shifts. A strange dream, a quiet voice, a deep feeling that says, wait. What if that whisper wasn't just your mind playing tricks, but something greater? In today's story, you'll meet Laura Myers, a woman whose life seemed perfectly calm until the summer of 2022. She wasn't searching for miracles. She didn't believe in signs. But just days before tragedy could strike, something came to her. A moment, a message, a subtle but powerful interruption. Some call it coincidence, others call it divine protection. What you're about to hear is real. A testimony of intuition, mystery, and an angel sign before tragedy that changed everything. Because sometimes what saves us isn't loud, it's quiet, almost invisible. And it waits for the one who listens. Before the worst happens, sometimes the universe sends a sign. If you believe in guardian angels, fate, or simply want to hear real stories of life-changing moments, subscribe to Saved by a Sign and stay with us for today's powerful story. A quiet life in motion. It was a soft, golden morning, the kind where the air feels unusually still, like the world is holding its breath. The sky was brushed with pale clouds, and I remember thinking how quiet everything felt. Almost too quiet. That kind of quiet where you sense something is coming, but you can't name what. I was at a red light on my way to work, sipping lukewarm coffee from a chipped travel mug when I saw it for the first time, 222. It was printed on the license plate of the dusty blue car in front of me. The numbers caught my eye, just for a second, but I brushed it off. Numbers are everywhere. It's easy to assign meaning where there is none, right? But then it happened again. That same afternoon, I stopped at the corner cafe near my office, like I always did. I ordered my regular, small oat milk latte, no syrup, and the cashier smiled as she handed me the receipt. 222, she said almost playfully. That's a lucky one. I smiled back, said something polite, but inside, I felt something shift. A strange stillness, like I had just overheard a secret I wasn't meant to catch. At first, I told myself it was just a coincidence, a harmless repetition. But in the days that followed, 222 kept appearing, quietly, persistently, on receipts, parking tickets, digital clocks glowing in the dark at 2:22 a.m. It was never loud, it never interrupted anything, but it was there, like a whisper following me from room to room. One night, I was folding laundry in silence, no music, no distractions, when I felt it, a sudden chill in the air. Not cold, but almost electric. I glanced at my phone to check the time, 2:22 a.m. I froze, not out of fear, but because something about that moment felt watched, not in a threatening way, more like someone was making sure I noticed. The next morning, I sat in my car before work and just stared at the steering wheel. I whispered into the stillness, "What do you want me to see?" It felt ridiculous, but I said it anyway. I didn't know who I was speaking to. God, a guardian angel, my own imagination. But something deep inside me was stirring, something that didn't feel like me. That week, the feeling intensified. A quiet urgency settled into my chest, like I was being gently pulled in a direction I couldn't see. I stopped taking my usual route to work. I declined an invitation to a road trip I'd already promised to attend. I couldn't explain why, I just couldn't go. Every time I thought about leaving town, the number would flash in front of me, on my phone, on a billboard, even once, carved into a park bench. 222. It no longer felt random. It felt intentional, as if something or someone was placing breadcrumbs on my path. I began to feel torn between logic and faith. Part of me wanted to believe it was all meaningless, that I was inventing patterns out of nothing. But a deeper part of Me, quieter, older, new. Then came the call. The same weekend I would have been on that road trip, I got a call from a friend in tears. There had been an accident. A truck had overturned on the highway, crushing the small car behind it. The very same route we were supposed to take, the very same hour we would have been there. I didn't say anything on the phone. I just sat there. The silence in my apartment was deafening. I looked over at the counter where my coffee receipt from that morning still lay. The total? $2.22. In that moment, something inside me cracked open, not with fear, but with awe. The kind of awe that humbles you, that makes you realize how much you don't know, how close we all walk to the edge without seeing it. I still don't know exactly what 222 means. Some say it's a number of balance. Others believe it's a message from angels, a spiritual alignment. I only know what it did for me. It stopped me. It made me listen. It placed just enough hesitation in my path to keep me from stepping into something I might not have returned from. Now, when I see it, I pause. I breathe. I pay attention. Because maybe the universe does speak. Maybe angel signs before tragedy aren't dramatic flashes of light or booming voices from the sky. Maybe they're soft, subtle, quiet enough to miss unless your soul is listening. And I'm listening now. Always. It was still dark when I opened my eyes. That soft blue hour before sunrise, when the world feels hushed, like it hasn't quite decided to wake up. My bedroom was quiet, untouched, the only sound the faint hum of the heater in the walls. I didn't know why I was awake. There had been no noise, no bad dream, just something. And then I heard it, not with my ears, but deeper, beneath the noise of waking thought. A voice, gentle, steady. Just 5 words, but they reached inside me like a hand placed quietly on my shoulder. "Don't go yet." That's all it said. I sat up, heart quickening, eyes searching the silence as if someone might be standing there, just out of reach. But the room was still, empty, not frightening, not cold, just watchful, like someone had been there only moments ago. I told myself it was a dream, a fragment maybe, a leftover thought, but it didn't feel that way. It didn't feel like something from me. It felt placed, like a seed pressed into the soil of my chest. Still, I got up. I brewed coffee. I walked through my morning like always, but that whisper stayed with me, following me in the way quiet things do, never loud, just present. Later that afternoon, I got a call from my friend Kate. She has this way of always knowing when to check in, and that day was no different. We talked like we always did, laughing, drifting through small things. Then we landed on the topic I'd been avoiding out loud, the new job in Arizona. "I don't know," I said. "It seems like a good move. More money, warmer weather." Kate was silent for a moment on the other end. Then she said, "I mean, maybe it is good, but I don't know why, I just feel like you shouldn't rush this." She said it lightly, casually, but something about the words hit me like cold air. I hadn't told her about the whisper. I hadn't told anyone, but there it was again. "Don't go yet," spoken now through her voice. I didn't answer right away. I just stared out the window, where the wind was stirring the branches of the trees, scattering soft gold leaves across the grass. The world looked normal, but something inside me was shifting. All day, I tried to push it down, to logic it away, but there was no logic in it, only stillness, and that voice. And here's the part I still can't explain. I felt safe, not scared, not manipulated, just seen, protected. Later that night, as I lay in bed, I whispered into the dark, "Was that you again?" And though the room was quiet, I felt something close. A warmth in the center of my chest, like someone was gently holding my heartbeat. I don't know what would have happened if I had gone. I never will. But I believe with everything in me that I wasn't meant to. Not yet. Sometimes angel signs before tragedy don't arrive with thunder or visions. Sometimes they come as a whisper before dawn, a voice in stillness that says, "Wait," because something unseen is waiting for you to listen. By the end of that week, it felt like the world was whispering through everything I touched. 222. Always that number, not once or twice, but everywhere. It wasn't just receipts and clocks anymore. It was loud now, woven into places it had no reason to be. A billboard on my drive to the grocery store, a telemarketer's number flashing on my phone, even a book I pulled from the shelf at random, page 222, staring up at me like it had been waiting. Each time it arrived with a strange wait, a pause, a breath caught in my chest, as if the universe had taken one quiet step closer. That Sunday, I went to church, something I hadn't done in months. I wasn't looking for answers. I just felt drawn. The sanctuary smelled faintly of old wood and candle wax, and as the music faded, the pastor stepped up to speak. He opened his Bible and began with a message I don't think was planned. His voice was steady, but full of feeling. "Sometimes," he said, "God speaks in repetition. He'll send the same word, the same image, the same moment over and over until you finally stop and ask, 'What are you trying to show me?'" I felt the air around me still, like the entire room had become sharper, clearer. The pastor continued, "We call it divine timing. It's not always a loud voice. Sometimes angels speak in patterns, a number, a dream, a hesitation in your spirit. If something keeps showing up, don't ignore it." My hands were trembling. I tried to keep my breathing quiet, but my heart was loud, thunderous. I glanced around, wondering if anyone else had noticed how directly those words had landed. But no one looked back. They couldn't feel what I was feeling. I walked out into the daylight, after the service, blinking against the brightness, the sun warm on my face, but I didn't feel calm. I felt watched, not in fear, but in awe, as if something sacred had brushed past me, as if I was not alone. Back home, I sat with my decision. The job in Arizona, the offer was still open, the path still clear, but now everything in me was clouded with questions. Was I being told not to leave, or was the warning about something else entirely? The truth is, I didn't feel scared. I felt paused, like I was standing at the edge of something and the ground beneath me was gently saying, "Not this way." It's a strange feeling, to be urged without being pushed, to be warned without knowing why. But the repetition, the voice, the message in the sanctuary, it all pointed to one thing. I was being told to listen, not with my ears, with something deeper. Maybe it was protection, maybe it was purpose, maybe it was grace wearing the shape of numbers. But I knew, without understanding how, that something was waiting on the other side of that decision, and whatever it was, I wasn't ready to face it, not yet. Monday morning began like any other. The sky was soft with grey clouds, and the air smelled faintly of rain that hadn't yet fallen. I decided to stop by the grocery store before work. Something small, some excuse to feel grounded. I wasn't looking for answers. I just wanted quiet. As I stepped out of the car, keys still in hand, I saw her. An older woman, elegant in a quiet way. Her silver hair was pulled back loosely, and she wore a pale blue coat that fluttered gently in the breeze. But it wasn't her appearance that caught me. It was her eyes, deep and steady, the kind that seemed to see past everything false, everything hidden. She walked straight toward me, not in a rush, not timid, just certain. And then she stopped, barely a few feet away, and spoke. Her voice was soft but clear, like she was reciting something she didn't write herself. "You have something waiting for you, but not where you think. Be still for a while." That was all. I didn't have time to respond. I don't think I could have, even if I tried. My voice felt locked somewhere deep inside. I just stood there, frozen, as she turned and walked away, disappearing quietly between the rows of parked cars, like she'd never been there at all. I waited, searching the lot, expecting to see her again. But she was gone. Not in the way people usually vanish, in the way signs do. Brief, ungraspable, but unforgettable. And suddenly I couldn't hold it back anymore. Tears filled my eyes without warning. There was no sadness, no fear, just a wave of something ancient and quiet and overwhelming. My heart was trembling with recognition, not from logic, but from something deeper, a knowing. Because this wasn't just a passing moment, this was part of the pattern. A voice had whispered before, the numbers had warned me, my friend had echoed the hesitation, the pastor had spoken of repetition, and now, a stranger with gentle eyes and words that pierced right through the doubt I didn't even admit I had. Be still for a while. That sentence wrapped itself around my soul like a blanket. I didn't understand it fully, not yet, but I believed it. Every part of me did. Not because it made sense, but because it made something in me stand still. Maybe she was just a woman passing by. Or maybe she was sent. Maybe angel signs before tragedy don't always arrive in dreams or voices. Maybe sometimes they wear skin and speak softly on cloudy mornings. And maybe that's how heaven reaches us, through strangers with gentle eyes, when we least expect it. That evening the air felt heavier somehow, the kind of quiet that rests over a home when the world outside feels too big, too loud. I didn't turn on the TV, I didn't touch my phone. I just sat on the edge of my bed with the window slightly open, letting the night air drift in, cool, still, alive with crickets. And then, for the first time in years, I prayed. Not the kind of prayer you memorize, not the kind that tries to sound strong or holy, just honest, raw. I closed my eyes and whispered into the silence. If there's something I'm not seeing, please show me. If I'm being protected from something, please don't let me miss it. Just give me peace, please. I stayed there for a while. No music, no sign, no voice this time. Just stillness and the faint hum of life outside my window. Then, almost without thinking, I reached for the Bible on my nightstand. It had dust on the cover. I hadn't opened it in years. I held it in my hands, heart beating a little faster, and I said softly, "Okay, one more time. If you have something to say, let me find it." I opened to a page at random, and there it was. Isaiah 22:22. I will place on his shoulder the key to the house of David. What he opens no one can shut, and what he shuts no one can open. My breath caught in my throat. 22:22. I stared at it, my hands trembling. A shiver ran through me, not of fear, but of recognition, of something aligning, as if heaven had gently touched my shoulder and said, "Now do you see?" I had spent days doubting, wondering if I was making too much of small things, numbers, voices, strangers, verses. But it all led here. It wasn't just chance, it wasn't paranoia, it was guidance. And for the first time I wasn't afraid, I wasn't confused. Because whatever had been speaking to me, whispering through clocks and receipts and sermons and sacred silence, had never once tried to scare me. It had only tried to hold me, to keep me safe. In that moment I didn't feel alone. I didn't feel unsure. I felt loved. Not the loud, dramatic kind of love. The quiet, steady kind. The kind that waits in doorways and lingers in dreams. The kind that sees ahead what we can't. I knew, without needing to explain it to anyone, that I wasn't supposed to go. Not yet. Not to that job. Not down that road. Because what needed to open would open. And what needed to stay shut was being shut for me. Some might call it coincidence, others divine design. But for me, it was the final whisper, the last confirmation, and it came not in thunder, but in love. It was a quiet afternoon when the call came. The sun was low, spilling warm light across my kitchen floor, and everything around me felt still, too still. The kind of stillness that wraps itself around you just before everything changes. I don't remember who told me, only the way the words fell, one by one, like stones in water. A highway accident just outside Phoenix. A truck had lost control, multiple vehicles. It happened on a stretch of road I knew well, the very route I would have been on had I said yes. The exact day, the exact hour. 4 cars were involved. One belonged to a young woman named Hannah. She had just started her new job, the same company, the same department. She didn't make it. Her name echoed in my chest like a bell. I didn't know her, but I saw myself in her. The same step into a new life. The same route. The same time. I sat at the edge of my bed, phone slipping from my hand, staring at the floor like it might offer answers. My hands began to tremble, not from panic, but from the quiet, overwhelming weight of what didn't happen. I could have been in that car. I could have taken that job, followed that map, walked into that day unaware of what was coming. But something intervened. The numbers, the whisper before dawn, the stranger in the parking lot. Isaiah 22:22, all of it. Each piece had seemed small on its own, fragile, easy to ignore. But now they felt like beams in a bridge I never saw being built, one that carried me safely over a moment that wasn't mine to walk through. The sorrow was heavy, not just for what almost was, but for what was, for Hannah, for her family, for a life that had opened one door and found only silence on the other side. But even in that sorrow, I felt something else, certainty. The signs hadn't been coincidences. They hadn't been superstition or wishful thinking. They were protection, whispered from a place I couldn't see but could now feel, clear and true. I had been held back for a reason, and not out of fear, but out of love. Because when angels warn us, they don't shout. They leave echoes. They place signs where we might step, hoping we'll slow down, hoping we'll see. I did, and because of that, I am here, breathing, grateful, listening still. That night I stepped outside barefoot, wrapped in an old quilt, drawn by a need I couldn't quite name. The sky above me was wide and endless, scattered with stars that pulsed like quiet hearts. The air was cool, almost sharp against my skin, but I welcomed it. I needed to feel something real. I sat on the back steps, knees pulled to my chest, and let the silence settle around me. Not the empty kind of silence, but the sacred kind, the kind that feels alive. And slowly, the memories began to move through me, not like flashbacks, but like pieces finally falling into place. The voice in the early morning darkness, "Don't go yet." Kate's unexpected words, "I just feel like you shouldn't rush this." The numbers, 222, pressing gently into every corner of my life. The stranger with silver hair and eyes that knew more than they should. You have something waiting for you, but not where you think. None of it was noise, none of it random. It was all real. And for the first time, I allowed myself to say it aloud. I was being protected. The words barely left my lips before the tears came. Not heavy, not panicked, just soft, steady drops that carried the weight of everything I hadn't dared admit. It wasn't just about avoiding danger. It wasn't just about what I didn't walk into. It was about waking up. Somehow I'd been drifting through my life with my eyes half closed, going through motions, making decisions from fear, from logic, from habit. But something had reached through all of that. Something sacred and unseen. Something that saw more than I ever could, and it didn't shake me to wake me. It whispered. It left signs one by one, hoping I would notice, hoping I would pause. And I did. In that moment under the stars, I didn't feel afraid anymore. I didn't need to explain it, or prove it, or understand every detail. I just believed, not in luck, not in coincidence, but in a love that watches quietly, a love that whispers warnings not to punish, but to protect, a love that never forces, only invites. That night, I looked up at the stars and whispered back, "I see you now." And I meant it. I didn't take the job. I stayed in Denver, in the same small apartment with the creaky floors and the sun that poured through my windows each morning like a quiet blessing. There was no big announcement, no dramatic moment of closure, just a choice made from stillness, not fear. And time moved forward. Weeks became months. Life didn't suddenly become easy or magical, but something inside me had shifted in a way I couldn't unfeel. I was no longer moving through life half asleep. I had woken up to presence, to purpose, to something greater than myself. I began praying, not just in moments of fear, but in moments of peace. I spoke to God like a friend. I listened in the silence without needing an answer, and slowly my days became more intentional. I started volunteering at a nearby shelter, a place I used to drive past without noticing. Now, I stepped inside, I listened to stories, I held trembling hands, I laughed with strangers. I cried too, but for the first time I felt connected to people, to purpose, to something sacred that ran deeper than achievement or plans. And always, like a soft hand on my shoulder, 222 kept returning. On street signs, on receipts, on the digital clock glowing on my stove late at night. Every time I saw it, it no longer brought questions. It brought comfort, a quiet reminder. You are loved. You are protected. Stay on this path. There were still days when doubt crept in, days when I wondered what might have happened if I'd chosen differently. But each time that shadow passed over me, I would close my eyes and remember. The whisper in the dark, the stranger's eyes, the scripture, the voice that came not to frighten me, but to hold me steady. Heaven hadn't shouted, it had whispered over and over until I listened. And now, I do, every single day. There are moments in life that don't ask for explanation, they don't arrive with proof, they don't demand belief. They just are. Quiet, gentle, unforgettable. When I look back now, I don't tell this story to talk about the tragedy I escaped. That's not what lives in my heart. What stays with me is the presence, the quiet guidance, the invisible hand that seemed to know where I was headed and gently asked me to stay because something was waiting for me. Just not where I thought. The number 222 still finds me. On clocks, receipts, license plates, pages I didn't mean to open. But now, I don't question it. I don't rush to decode it. I simply breathe, I smile, I listen. To me, that number is more than a coincidence. It's a reminder, a symbol of alignment, of divine timing, and, most of all, of grace. I used to move through life thinking I had to figure everything out on my own, that decisions were mine to control, and signs were just wishful thinking. But then came the whisper, the stranger, the scripture, the pause, each one layering over the last, until I couldn't ignore the truth anymore. Something was trying to reach me, not to frighten me, not to stop me, but to protect me, to love me. And love, I've learned, doesn't always arrive wrapped in understanding. Sometimes it comes in the form of hesitation, a dream that lingers, a stranger's voice, or a number that quietly waits for you to notice. We live in a world that moves fast, that dismisses anything unseen. But every so often, something breaks through. And if you're paying attention, you feel it, not in your head, in your soul. So now, when people ask me what it all meant, What 222 means. I say this, it means I was seen, it means I was spared, it means something greater was at work, something I may never fully understand but will always believe in, because maybe guardian angels don't always look like we expect. Maybe divine timing doesn't arrive with thunder. Maybe the universe speaks in soft patterns, in quiet invitations, in the tiniest moments that carry the heaviest truth. And maybe, just maybe, the most sacred messages don't need to be explained. They only need to be received. Have you ever experienced a sign like that? Something that appeared again and again until it made you stop and listen? Do you believe it was just coincidence or something divine? What would you have done if this had happened to you? Do you think angels try to guide us, even when we're not looking? You don't have to answer now. Just hold the questions. Let them sit quietly in your heart. Because that's where most miracles begin, not with certainty, but with stillness. And if this story touched your heart, don't let these signs go unnoticed. Subscribe to Saved by a Sign and stay with us to hear more real stories of faith, mystery, and the moments when life whispers, just in time. Thank you for staying until the end, but remember, there are stories that aren't just meant to be heard, they're meant to be felt. We'll see you in the next one, if you're still listening.